Third generation Threadripper has launched. 24 and 32 core behemoth lineup. Let's take a look. So we're on to our third generation of Ryzen, and announced today is the third generation of Threadripper. These things are pricey, and I think for the first time, possibly ever, but certainly in a very long time, we are seeing Intel slashing their prices to compensate for their lower performance. Now that is a complete flip around. Interesting times that we live in. So today we have seen the first two in what will be a lineup of Threadripper CPUs. The 24-core 48-thread 3960X and the 32-core 64-thread 3970X. And these things are pricey. $1,399 and $2,000 respectfully. No pricing immediately available on the boards. I'm expecting them to be around about the £700 mark, possibly up to $1,000 for the Zenith Extreme 2, but I couldn't find definitive pricing on the board manufacturers' websites. But a whole ton of detail that has come out, a whole bunch of benchmarks. So both of these CPUs are going to have a boost clock of 4.5 gigahertz. 200 megahertz slower than the 3900X, 100 megahertz slower than the 3950X. So those are 12 core and 16 core parts. The 16 core part we're still waiting to come out. So slightly slower in the boost clock. The base clocks broadly the same between both of these chips, only 100 megahertz between them. So that's a 3.8 gigahertz on the 24 core part and a 3.7 gigahertz on the 32 core part. So it will be really interesting to see how these things compare into what is a very high core count on the Ryzen kind of commercial standard consumer desktop lineup, particularly for things that I'm interested in like Premiere Pro, gaming and stuff like that. I think it's very conceivable to think that Ryzen actually may outperform because of the higher boost clocks. The caveat on the AMD website is that this is for single core bursty type workloads. We've got the Threadripper in the system behind me running at its boost clock on all cores on a permanent overclock, so I'm kind of expecting that same kind of performance. The PCIe lanes on these things are insane. So as expected, we've got a new chipset, a new socket. That is principally because of the PCIe 4, and these things are boasting a behemoth 88 lanes of PCIe 4. That's insane. That's a hell of a lot of storage. That's a hell of a lot of connectivity. That's insane. The Cascade X lineup that we're expecting from Intel, revisions of their X series CPUs, still on PCIe 3 and only 48 lanes for each of those parts, are substantially smaller than the Threadripper lineup. Intel crazily slashing their prices, so the very pinnacle and top lineup, the 10980 XE part expected at under $1,000. So for the first time, we're seeing Intel prices undercutting AMD to compensate for the lower performance. A bunch of stats that were released in an AMD kind of demo video showing good incremental performance over their current X series lineups of CPUs. They're a year old, but actually the Cascade Lake X lineup is broadly a revision, so comparative, I think, for the purposes of this video. So a sizable bump up in CINEBENCH, a big push in the propaganda from AMD around 3D rendering type activity, and a lot of comparison about code compiling, both for kind of like Android type based technologies, but also for gaming type stuff as well. Nothing in there at all about content creation, nothing about Premiere Pro, nothing in there about games. So it will be really interesting to see how these things stack up. Genuinely, we are getting set for a CPU war, it feels like, in November and December. Good for the consumer, that is. My advice, as always, we've seen no independent benchmarks on these CPUs. We've not got the Cascade Lake X release with their independent benchmarks. So my advice, as always, is wait. Let's see some reviews before you sink certainly anywhere near this sort of cash. Talking at least $2,000, I would say, as a minimum, just for the main board and CPU. For the Threadripper system, you're probably talking about 1,500 quid for a top-end part from Intel. Substantial amounts of money. You want to make the most informed decision that you can. Really, and you can tell, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this. We've been getting ready for a new build. I'm feeling slightly less certain about Threadripper now, if I'm honest, so I am going to drink my own champagne and take my own advice. And I think wait and see how the 3900X, 3950X, the 12 and 16 core mainstream parts from AMD stack up in games and content creation compared to Threadripper, because that's what I'm interested in. We'll certainly wait to see what the Intel parts have got to offer, but I think it's unlikely I'll go down the Intel route slightly because I find that difficult to do. But exciting times, good for the consumer. So there we go, guys. Threadripper launches. Let's wait and see some independent reviews. As always, I hope you're really well wherever in the world you are. Please like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in my next one.